Welcome to Drink Beer, Think Beer, the podcast that gets to the bottom of every pint. I'm John Hall. Hop harvest continues in the Pacific Northwest, and this week, Meghann Quinn of Bale Breaker Brewing in Washington sits down to talk about the 2022 harvest, brewing fresh hopped beers, and finding new ways to get brewers hops. But first, All About Beer is back online and producing original content for beer enthusiasts and professionals. Go visit allaboutbeer.com to see the latest. And if you want to support us in that endeavor, we've set up a Patreon for both readers and professional companies in the beer space. Check out patreon.com/allaboutbeer to learn more. And for more audio content, search All About Beer on your podcast platform of choice and listen to the shows that are now available, including the All About Beer podcast with M. Souter and Don Tess, a beer traveler show with Andy Crouch, and the Brewer to Brewer podcast, which runs every other week and features brewers, talking to brewers. We're able to bring you this show each week thanks to the companies that support independent journalism in the beer space. Learn more about our surprisingly affordable rates by emailing info@allaboutbeer.com. And speaking of that, today's episode is sponsored by New Holland Brewing. Did you know that the term dragon's milk has been around since the 17th century? It was used to describe potent ales and elixirs that were worthy of celebration, a reward at the end of a hero's journey. New Holland Brewing Company is proud to continue that tradition today with Dragon's Milk Bourbon Barrel Aged Stout, clocking in at a robust 11% ABV and featuring notes of roasted malt, chocolate, and vanilla. The legend of Dragon's Milk continues to grow, and we'll raise a glass to that. Learn more and find Dragon's Milk near you at dragonsmilk.com. And why not head to Colorado next month? You should check out the Denver Rare Beer Tasting, which is happening on October 7th. It's an incredible afternoon of beer passion, featuring America's top craft breweries pouring rare, exotic, and vintage brews to benefit the Pints for Prostates campaign. This is truly a bucket list event for a great cause, where you get to try beers you won't find elsewhere and meet the men and women who brewed them. You can find more information at pintsforprostates.org. In the 1920s, when the practice was more common, Meghann Quinn's ancestors followed the railroad west and wound up settling a farm in Washington's Yakima Valley. Following the repeal of Prohibition, they got into the hop industry and have ridden the wave since, supplying the larger brewers through the, uninspired decades of large-scale American brewing and into the boom days of today's craft industry. Seeing the success of hops in the larger market coupled with an interest in homebrewing, Quinn, along with her husband Kevin and her brothers, launched Bale Breaker Brewing on the property in 2013. And Meghann Quinn is my guest today. How close is the brewery to the field? Well, it takes less than 5 minutes to get from bine into the kettle, he says. And it's more than hops growing around here as well. There's an apple orchard on the nearly 3,000-acre farm, along with fields of Hungarian wax peppers, some hemp, and 2021 marked the third barley harvest. Last year, they processed more than 200,000 pounds of barley, some of which went into Bale Breaker beers. There's a real sense of pride that comes with growing ingredients where they are and used, and it's clear from the steady stream of visitors that come through not only during this season, but year-round, that drinkers and other brewers feel the same way. Here's our conversation. So we're at the halfway point of harvest season right now, thereabouts?
Pretty close to halfway through. We... up here at the original farm, Loftus Ranches, we start a little bit later. We don't really have any super early hops. The first hops we pick are Simcoe up here, so we started August 31st.
Okay.
We should be done somewhere between like the 26th and 28th of September.
Okay.
And then down at the newer farm down in Granger, we started like 3 or 4 days before that.
Okay.
And we'll be done in a couple days.
Are you getting a handle on what the yield is looking like this year? Is there a good sense?
Yeah. The mature stuff is looking pretty decent, pretty average. The baby stuff is pretty small. We had a very unusually cool spring, and so the babies that were planted in the spring didn't really fill out. If you want silver linings, it makes for quick picking, but there's not a big yield.
Yeah, I don't think you'd want quick pickings, right? Is that?
Yeah, no, we like big full hops that you got to slow down the picking machine so the cleaner can keep up. But yeah, I think for us on our farm, it'll be, somewhere right in the neighborhood of the historic average, maybe a little higher, maybe right at it. Nothing. We've had some pretty big years the last few years, and so it won't be anything like that. But quality's very good. We smell every baling room sample that we bale at both farms. So even if we're not selecting those hops, we still sniff them just to see. Quality's good, aroma's good. But
I know the last couple of years there's been the worry of the fires, and obviously yesterday between the smoke in the air and the rain, there was a lot of nervous looking upwards and looking to the fields. What was the day like yesterday like for you?
Yeah, I mean, I think it needs a longer exposure than what we've had now. I mean, we had a huge fire like 20 miles down the road last year. We didn't see any smoke taint in ours. I think just this really short window of it, and honestly, compared to how bad it was last year, this isn't that bad.
Yeah.
And I think too, it's not necessarily what it's doing while it's hanging in the fields and stuff. It's just how smoky is it around where your kiln is and stuff, because you're out in the field, there's still 75% moisture. We're drying them down to 9 or 10%. So you're driving a lot of air and a lot of heat through that bed of hops. And I think that's where I think you're picking up that smoke taint, is getting it sucked in as what's supposed to be fresh air blowing through there is, heavy smoke. I think that's where you can see some smoke taint. And I don't think it was like prolific or anything last year. Talking to the other brewers and stuff, they would say, oh yeah, one lot here or one lot there, we were picking up some smoke, but on a whole, they were still clean smelling hops.
This is even part of the conversation now. And I'm not trying to be alarmist, because, I don't think that it's at that level yet, but there's certainly more awareness when it comes to these fires that seem to be coming more regularly, or weather patterns changing where, you do get rain events during harvest where that typically didn't happen in the past. Where does your mind go for not just this year, but next year and 5 years and 10 years from now as to what may need to be done?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a big concern for, anyone that makes their money based on like what nature's going to give you. Yeah. So on the farm level, we've already started kind of, conservation efforts. We already do, drip lines. We, use less pesticides and insecticides and herbicides and stuff like that we're already doing. One of the largest solar panel installations, like privately owned, is on Loftus Ranches, on all of the buildings there. So we got a lot of renewable energy there. And then us as brewers too. I mean, we're working on conserving water, side streaming, using less CO2, all the things we can. But yeah, I mean, getting warmer and more fires and that stuff, not good. I'm sure that there would be a point where it was bad. I mean, this year, honestly, these fires that just started are like our first big ones we've had of the year, where in the last few years, it's like from like July on, there's been constant smoke in the air. So we're pretty lucky. I mean, here where we are, and where we get our water, kind of, we're still probably at like the very southern end of like the North Cascades. Yeah. And in terms of like snowpack and precipitation and stuff, we're still pretty good, like way better than, once you get into like Southern Oregon and California and stuff like that, where they're seeing those severe droughts. So we got a ton of snow and precipitation late, like in April and stuff, which I think is one of the reasons that our fire season held out.
Okay.
We had more snow in the mountains in April than we did like in January and February combined.
Okay.
So, and we were over 100% snowpack. So the water was, everyone gets their full water rights.
Yeah.
So that's been good. So we have been lucky that we're like this far north and we're not seeing those huge shortages and the really bad drought conditions. Yakima, the Yakima Valley is a high desert anyway. So, I mean, we typically see like around 8 inches of precipitation as average. So we're used to being very dry.
Yeah. As you think about what you're doing in-house, I mean, there's obviously going to be forces outside of the brew house that you just can't control at this point. Do you wind up having conversations with other brewers who come through from other parts of the country about what's happening here, or long-term concerns or long-term thoughts, and anything that they can do as they head back home?
Yeah, I mean, we're all always talking. I think those brewers in the Southwest and stuff, we end up learning a lot of stuff from them because they're just further along in this water shortage.
They're a little drier.
Yeah. And so but I mean, as an industry as a whole, I think the majority of us are trying to be conscious about that, because brewing is like a water heavy.
Yeah,
I mean,
and not just for beer.
Yeah, it takes a lot of barrels of water to make 1 barrel of beer. So, being cognizant of it and doing stuff. But I mean, even short little things like, making sure that you put a timer on, like while you're rinsing a tank and stuff. Like, you forget that, and we have 80 psi and an 1.25 inch line. I mean, you can put a whole bunch of water in a tank real fast.
Yeah.
And so little stuff like that, and then especially on like the CO2 side, we have all like automated timers on it, so you can't forget it.
Okay.
It's like we set it and it opens and it purges the tank, and then after a certain amount of time, then that valve automatically closes, so you can't like forget and then purge a tank like all night.
Yeah.
Which has happened in the past.
Yikes. There's a lot of focus on fresh hop, wet hop beers this time of year, and I want to talk about that in a minute. But for the rest of the year, when you're brewing and you're thinking about the hops that you've harvested and being literally on the farm, is there a sense of place that you carry into the beers from even outside of this window that we're in right now?
Yeah, I mean, we've always wanted to showcase hops. I mean, it's kind of crazy to think about now, considering where we are with all the IPAs and hazy IPAs and cold IPAs and everything else that's going on now. But when we were first talking about this in 2010, somewhere in that range, people were still saying like, I don't like hoppy beers, and they were meaning that we were kind of at that arms race of like how many IBUs could you get in it at that point. And so
it's such a silly point to look back now on that, of just how ridiculous that was.
Yeah, it was like, this one's 151 IBUs.
Yeah,
it's like
somebody comes out with 1,000, and it's like, that's not a thing.
But we always wanted to open the brewery to showcase like the versatility of hops, and that hoppy doesn't just mean bitter. And now, like, saying that at 10, 12 years later of where we are, is kind of silly, but we've always wanted to showcase the hops. We have our homegrown series, which will actually be releasing our fresh hop version of that tomorrow, but we started growing barley as well. I think this was our 4th year. So the homegrown series is 100% of the ingredients, all the barley and all the hops we grow ourselves, and then Great Western Malting and out of Vancouver, Washington, and Link Malting out of Spokane, Washington, malt the barley for us. So that one we have a little bit more focus on, like barley. It might not, it has more of like a malt backbone than a lot of our other beers, but we're like the signature of Bale Breaker beers is, and my brother-in-law and I talk about this a lot. It's like they're a little drier than the average style is going to be, and they're going to be a little hoppier than the average style is. And so, I think that goes for everywhere from like our Pilsner to our Imperials is like it's the same way.
Yeah. There has been by and large, a lot of the beers that are being made are following in the hazy IPA arena, sort of a formulaic recipe of some version of Citra Mosaic and a few other things thrown in here and there, and that kind of thing. And there are consumers that flock to those beers for those profiles. So when you're talking about being, a little maltier, a little hoppier, where you have these senses of place, that's just slightly askew from maybe the norm, for better or worse, and probably worse. Is that a difficult conversation to have with certain drinkers?
I don't think so. In a time now where people just like the demand for like new is so crazy that it's just like, oh yeah, this is our year-round hazy IPA actually uses Sabra, which is has a lot different characteristics than like your Citra Mosaic, that sort of thing. So I think, and it finishes out a lot drier than most hazy, especially kind of East Coast. That East Coast hazy that typically has a higher finishing gravity than what we would have in our beers. That beer still finishes in like the low 2 Platos, like 2.2, something like that.
Yeah.
So I don't think so now. It was harder when we were first opening, and we had a Field 41 Pale Ale, and we opened with Field 41 Pale Ale and Top Cutter IPA, and Field 41 Pale Ale was 4.5% alcohol pale ale that was hopped at 3.2 pounds per barrel.
Okay.
And it was like, and in 2013, like that wasn't that common.
Yeah. Jumping back to Sabro, aside from it finishing drier, what is it that about that hop that appeals to you?
Yeah, you get more of like this kind of like pina colada, coconut, kind of pineapple flavors and aromatics from it. And so that's just very different than, especially your big Citra hazies that when you throw it in during fermentation, you get a little biotransformation, and, they all seem to kind of funnel down to like that big orange, flavor that we didn't want our beer to taste like all the other ones. We also like have it go through the same clarifying process that we do with our Pilsner. And so it's a very stable haze that's in there. And so there's no yeast and no hops and nothing else left in it. It's just a nice haze. So it feels very light on the palate too for a hazy. I know that sounds weird to say, but it is.
Okay. But has that come from trial and error? Like to again, I think that sort of is a good representation of how you guys are doing things your own way, or just different because
we're
of where you are.
We're very slow to like roll out new beers, I would say, and in an industry that I think is very dynamic, and there's always new beers and new things. And you look at like the top 50 beers in the IRI, and it's like half of them weren't around like whatever it was 3 or 5 years ago. I can't remember the exact stat, but it's something like that. But yeah, for our hazy IPA, hazy L, we had that in R&D for like just over a year and a half before we released it. So I don't know how many batches we did of it, but a lot. And then kind of it was the same thing with the Pilsner. The Pilsner was closer to like 2 years. And then we brought in some horizontal lagering tanks because we wanted to do it traditionally, but now some of the
Well, bless you for that, but
larger European breweries that specialize in lagers have come in and let us know that our tanks aren't nearly tall enough to pose any problem for vertically lagering.
Oh, okay. Was that done in a friendly way, or okay?
Yeah.
Sly laugh. Yeah.
No, it was. I actually wasn't here. I was traveling last week, brewing some fresh hop beers in Hawaii and Alaska, and so my wife Meghann who also founded the brewery with myself and her younger brother Kevin. She was giving a tour to him, and she was like, "Yeah, we have these two horizontal lagering tanks, but then luckily the beer was taken off, and now we need to do it in the vertical tanks, and we were a little worried about if there was going to be any effect on the lagering." And I guess he looked at it and said, "What is this, about 5-6 meters?" Which it is. It's like a 21-foot tall tank. And he's like, "Nope, yeah, no, the pressure and stuff. Nope, you won't have a problem with that. Not nearly tall enough to pose any problems." So,
with everything that you have to do at this time of year with harvest, and the excitement of people coming in from around the country and around the world, what's that balance like between, okay, like we're running a real farm here, and there's real things that we have to do, and everybody's coming in and they're excited about picking, but also partying a little bit maybe, or just like having you're not just the normal brewer who's here, you're the brewer who also has a working farm that the rest of the industry is going to be relying on later on this year.
Yeah, luckily, us included, and the rest of the beer industry doesn't have to worry about like us actually doing the harvesting and farming. I mean, the farm team at Loftus Ranches is great, and we've had guys there. My older brother-in-law Pat runs it now, and with my father-in-law Mike, and we have such a good team that they're up there. We don't. Meghann, Kevin, and I run the farm, and then run the brewery, and then Pat and Mike run the farm. So luckily, we don't have to
silo it out a little bit.
Yeah, and so we do a lot of tours and stuff, and then we, like I mentioned earlier, we are doing like selection almost daily or every other day, especially this time of year when we're going from Simcoe, to Laurel to Citra. Then we'll get into Mosaic. All those are big hops for us in terms of usage, and so I don't know. We've probably already sniffed 14, 16 lots of Citra, and we still got some more.
How do you keep your senses sharp for all of that?
We have a great sensory manager here, Jackie, and she's actually out on maternity leave. Her and her husband had their first baby, a baby boy, so congrats to them.
Yeah.
But there's like sensory kits that she puts in, and we'll sniff them, and then there's like a test on it. It's like,
okay,
what is this aroma? And you have to do it. I don't know if I've ever actually passed or failed it, but I guess I still get my say.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's how we do it.
What do you look for when using Citra? Like what? Because it can show at different times depending on when it was picked. Or
sure.
Yeah. What do you like?
Yeah. So for us, we like that kind of bright citrus that you get off it, but we also like early harvest Simcoe, which has a lot of like grapefruit citrus in it, and so we tend to go to a little later in the window on Citra, where you still get some good citrus on it, and the big grapefruit that it's known for, but then maybe also getting into that like slight OG. Like we don't want it to be what we would call like, I don't know, I guess like a dirty hop or anything, but we want it just typically a little bit of the later end, like a more mature, not that just clean, straight citrus, because that's kind of what we have Simcoe for. And then for us, when we get into Mosaic, that's like the hop that we want, like the dank and the OG, and it's like that's the one that, like, you know, that's what we typically use that for. And then the Mosaic too, we're also looking to get like not just one or two. You know, the Mosaic was called Mosaic because, like, when it was going through sensory during breeding, it was like everyone was putting different things. Like people were saying like citrus and blueberry, and this and that and that. And so
I remember tasting blueberry on some of the very first 369 trials that I had. Yeah.
So we go for a lot more complexity in that one, and I guess that would be a good way to describe the Citra too. We want a little bit more complexity to it than just the straight citrus.
The majority of hops that are picked this time of year will be dried and be used later on throughout the year and beyond.
2023.
Yeah, but there's excitement for the fresh hop beers, and I feel like that's grown more and more and more over the last couple of years. And I want to ask you about the outreach program in a minute, but for you, what's the excitement and the allure of fresh hop? And do you call it fresh hop or wet hop?
Well, I guess like behind the scenes, we call it wet hop, but that's just because of kind of like who our mentors were and stuff in the industry, like Sierra Nevada and Russian River and stuff like that. Like that they call it wet hop, and so we've always called it wet hop. I think for like once you get to the consumer side, there's a lot of confusion between what fresh and wet hops are, and I think that the industry has, kind of chosen to go with fresh hop. So when we're talking about it like consumer facing, we just say fresh hop. But for us, it's like, it's hard not to say wet hop because that's how we've been saying wet hops for.
Okay.
I remember Ken Grossman said, like, wet hops are not dried hops, and fresh hops are like, they're like the first hops that come off the field, right?
Yeah.
And so it's like, and even if you look at the GABF like definition of what a fresh hop beer can be, like it can be a dried whole cone sample, like, or it could be a freshly made pellet, like it can be wet, like there's a lot more meanings to fresh hop than just the actual wet hop, but that is by and far like what 99.9% of the consumers use. So to limit confusion, like we go with fresh hop publicly.
Okay. More in a moment. But if you'd like to help keep the show on the air, please reach out to info@allaboutbeer.com and we'll let you know about our advertising options. Speaking of that, today's episode is sponsored by New Holland Brewing. Did you know that the term dragon's milk has been around since the 17th century? It was used to describe potent ales and elixirs that were worthy of celebration, a reward at the end of a hero's journey. New Holland Brewing Company is proud to continue that tradition today with Dragon's Milk Bourbon Barrel Aged Stout, clocking in at a robust 11% ABV and featuring notes of roasted malt, chocolate, and vanilla. The legend of Dragon's Milk continues to grow, and we'll raise a glass to that. Learn more and find Dragon's Milk near you at dragonsmilk.com. And now, back to the conversation with Kevin Quinn of Bale Breaker Brewing. So what do you like about these beers?
I mean, one, you can only do it like this certain window, which is cool. And then I think I know for my brother-in-law Kevin as well, like there's some unpredictability to it.
Yeah.
That's kind of fun.
Okay.
Where like the rest of the year it's like, we're using extract for bittering, like that's like very tried and true. It's like we know on the lower ABV beers we're doing first wort hopping with Simcoe. Like we know what's going to happen there. Like we know how our hops react in this, and then we're brewing the same beers over and over again. That it's like, like and we don't get to choose what field, right? We just know that like if we want to do Citra, we can look at the harvest schedule and know when it's going to be, but like we don't.
Yeah.
We don't know exactly what their aromatics are going to be. And so, it's like you get it, you smell it, and then it's like, okay. And then, and it's a very Northwest regional thing, right? Because if you look at Washington, 75% of the U.S. hops, roughly 30% of the world's hops. And then you add in Idaho and Oregon, and you're like at something like 97 or 98% of the U.S. hop production. So and you need to be pretty close, or you need a way to get hops there fast.
Yeah.
And so I think it also too just is like so core to like what Bale Breaker is as a brand. We're the only brewery located in a commercial hop farm, and we're the only brewery that grows all their own hops. And so like it takes us like 4 minutes and 9 seconds to get a cherry bin full of hops, drive it from the picking machine, and put it into the process.
Is that an actual calculation of 4 minutes and 9 seconds?
It's pretty close.
Okay.
It might be. It's less than 5 minutes.
Okay.
It's more than 4 and less than 5.
Okay. For a while, and I don't know if this is maybe 5 years ago, pre-pandemic, there were brewers around the country that were getting FedEx boxes, a couple hundred pounds, FedEx freight, and within 24 hours of picking, and planning their brews around it, and traffic delays and everything else sort of put. Yeah. I don't know if that's still largely the case. I haven't heard too many people talking about that on social media this year. But you are part of a program to get fresh hops to the remotest of states. Yeah.
So first part of your question.
Yeah.
Yes, if people do want to get all of our hops, go to Yakima Chief Hops.
Okay.
So that's where we get all of our hops from. And yes, they do have a fresh hop program that you can order. You can order wet hops, and they will, UPS or FedEx them or whatever.
Yeah.
And,
I don't want to take away. If somebody's getting hops in like Alabama or something that have been picked, is it going to be the same kind of beer as opposed to the less than 5 minutes?
No, it's definitely not going to be.
Okay.
So you're going to get a natural like degradation of hops of the fresh hops, wet hops, the longer they are from being picked. So the way that you can slow that down is by keeping them very cold and just getting them there really fast. And so FedEx and UPS and stuff, whatever, that's great, right? That's a good option. It's going to get there fast. But then it's like, I know Yakima Chiefs had problems with like, oh, well, this 300 pounds that was going to XYZ brewery got lost in whatever, Memphis or wherever their headquarters are. Yeah. And then it sits in 90-degree heat in Memphis for a day because they don't know it's there. And then it gets sent to the brewer. And then by then it's like, it's probably not going to be a great representation of what a wet hop is.
Right. Yeah.
And so this partnership with Alaska Airlines and Yakima Chief really came up just a couple months ago. And one of our brewers, Mike, was in the Air Force, and his commanding officer ended up taking a job at Alaska Airlines Cargo. His name's Jake. And then so Jake and I believe his boss, Adam, they reach out to us and say, hey, can we come? We just want to sit down. We're going to drive over from Seattle, come over, talk to you guys. We try to do these Cargo Alliance things where we highlight Northwest industries and yada, 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 and like our capability of like actually being really good at like shipping cargo. Like they ship thousands and thousands of tons of like fresh fish and seafood from Alaska down into Seattle and up and down the West Coast and actually all over the country. And so like they were like, is there something we can do with your beer? And obviously there's legal regulations to like what we have to do with beer. And so we said, no, there's not really a beer thing, but like you could ship hops around. Like that'd be pretty cool. And especially like you really want to highlight how good you can go like point to point, SeaTac to Maui and get hops there in great condition, fresh hops, and then we can brew the first fresh hop beer that Maui Brewing's ever brewed.
Yeah.
Like they were like, cool, that sounds actually pretty fun. Like we'll talk to, the higher ups and see if we can get this. So Alaska Airlines got on board, and Yakima Chief is on board, and we ended up brewing with Maui Brewing in Maui last Tuesday, and then last Friday we brewed in Anchorage, obviously where Alaska Airlines was founded.
Yeah.
And Alaska Airlines randomly was founded the same year as our hop farm, both in 1932. And so, last week we loaded up a few 100 pounds of Simcoe and a new hop product the Yakima Chief's doing. It's called frozen fresh hop cryo. They actually take frozen wet hop pellets and then concentrate them and make cryo pellets out of them, and they keep them frozen. We should have some in the back actually. And we sent that over to Maui and brewed on Tuesday, and then Wednesday flew back to Seattle, then drove back to Yakima, then picked up my brother-in-law. We drove back over to SeaTac, hopped on a plane Friday morning, flew up to Anchorage, brewed all day in Anchorage, then Saturday morning jumped back on the plane, flew down to SeaTac, and it was Grandma Pat's 90th birthday. It's her parents who founded the farm in 1932, and she happened to be born in 1932. So
that's a big year.
We made Grandma Pat's 90th birthday and brewed wet hop beers in Hawaii and Alaska.
Yeah, made drinkers there pretty happy, I imagine, in the next couple of weeks.
It was, it's something that we take for granted, I think, and just like having this close of access to hops. And it was like, yesterday we did 2 tours of the farm and like showed people all the, all of our employees and stuff, the picking machines and stuff. And they're like, minds are blown. And we're like, okay, well, yeah, obviously my in-laws have seen it their whole life, and I've seen it now nearly the last 20 years. And it's kind of like, I don't want to say like we get desensitized to it, but it's just like, I guess we just know what it's supposed to be like, but I mean, it was like the whole brew teams and staff were coming to like, can I rip open this fresh hop? Like, can I smell it? Like, this is what a fresh hop is, because typically they're just seeing it in like pellet form. Yeah. If they see it at all. Yeah. And so it was just cool to see people like so excited about something that I was telling my wife Meghann, I was saying that like, oh, you got to try like not to take this all for granted, like go like because man, like the people that don't see it all the time, it's really like blows their mind. Yeah. There is I think because of the name and because of the limited window, there is a rush to drink these beers almost as quickly as they're available, right? So it's 2 to 3 weeks after you mash in that these can be ready. Yep. Is that the best time to be drinking a fresh hop beer? Is it right off the line, or do you think that there's some benefit to a little bit of age? Oh, I definitely think it is, because the beer changes. Like it's something like going back to that unpredictability. Like it's interesting to drink fresh hop beers like over a period of time, because you do have I don't know what it is about the use of the fresh hops in the beer that does that, but like they change. I mean, obviously we would say the fresher the better, but I mean, if you get a 4-pack or a couple 4-packs, like putting one in the fridge for like a month and then trying it later is interesting, because I guarantee it's not going to taste like it did. Yeah. Do you do that? Yeah. I mean, we luckily have it just because, we keep some for our sensory samples and stuff. But I mean, for fun, do you do that? Yeah. Is there a sweet spot for you? Are you opening these on Christmas? No. I mean, the longest time I've seen was actually a keg, and we were up north of here in Wenatchee a few years ago. Well, way more than a few years ago. It was not long after we had opened, so probably 2014, 2015. And at that time, our Piled High recipe, the one beer that we've done every year since we opened, was 100% wet hop beer. Okay. So like bittered with wet hops, like everything through it. There wasn't a pellet that touched it. And we were doing an event like close to Thanksgiving. Or maybe it was just after. It was either just before or just after Thanksgiving. And we get there, and the account is like super excited to see us. And he's like, I got a surprise for you. And he's like, check up on the board. And I look up there, and it says piled high. And I look at John and was like, oh, no. And he was like,
this is how reputations are made.
Yeah. And he was like, don't worry, I've had it in my cooler. He's like, I got it like at the end of September when you guys sent it out. I've been having it in here, the whole time. And I was like, okay, I'll try it. And then you get not a lot, but you get some haze typically with fresh hop beers for whatever reason. And so I knew that beer when I had it, 6 weeks before that. Yeah. Or 2 months before that. It was kind of hazy, like kind of like a Bodhisattva haze, like not super.
Okay.
And he pours it, and it is dead clear. Like I could have read an email through it. And I'm like, so I asked him to check it. Is that really the beer? And we go back through and like, oh yeah, sure enough it is. And I tried it, and it was super good, but it didn't taste anything like it did before. And so I think it is nice just to see what happens.
Okay. So what you're saying is hold on to these for the holidays.
Yeah, I don't know about that. Maybe one can.
Okay. Or a keg for a special occasion. Be thankful for the harvest. I know you got a busy day ahead of you, so I'm not going to keep you too much longer, but I've been asking folks on the show for a while now the green door question, which is I don't know if you're familiar with the television show The Good Place, but there is a concept on that show of walking through a green door that will bring you anywhere that you want at any point in time. You can be with whoever you want to be with. Mm-hmm. So if there was a green door on our plane of existence and you could finish this conversation and walk through it and be at any pub or brewery anywhere in the world with whoever you wanted to be, where would you want to go? Who would you want to be with? And what would you like in your glass?
Ooh, man, that's a good question. I definitely know who I'd want to be with. I'd be having a beer with my wife, Meghann, hopefully not at this tap room, although I do love it. I don't know if there's anywhere else you can have a beer in the middle of a hop field, but we spend enough time here. I would say probably, where would it be? We'd have some good beers in a lot of places. What brewery? I would say I'd probably have to say with Meghann, down in Santa Rosa, having a Pliny the Younger at the original pub.
The original Russian River.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a good answer.
Thanks.
It's good beer. It's a good spot.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for taking some time in the busy season and sharing some stories and getting me excited and everybody else excited about all these fresh hops that are going to be out in the next week or so.
Yes, ours start rolling out tomorrow, and they'll be available mostly throughout our distribution footprint, which is Washington, Oregon, and Idaho, and then definitely at our two pubs. We obviously have our tap room here at our production facility in Yakima, and then we opened a year ago. We opened a tap room in Ballard with some friends of ours as well. Yonder Cider.
Okay. So go there and drink it. Cool.
Yep. The tap rooms are the only spot you'll be able to get all of our pilot brew ones that are only like 7-8 barrel batches.
Cool.
Yeah.
Drink them all.
That's right.
Cool. Thanks, Kevin.
Yeah. Thank you for your time. Cheers.
What fresh hop have you already enjoyed? Let me know. You can email me. It's John Hall. That's JOHNHOLL @allaboutbeer.com, or get with me on Twitter at John_Hall. All About Beer is on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Just follow along at All About Beer. And of course, This Week in Rauch Beer is also online. The Facebook group is easy to search, and on Twitter and Instagram, it's at TW Rauch Beer. We're able to bring you this show each week thanks to the companies that want to support independent journalism in the beer space. If you'd like to learn more about our surprisingly affordable rates, please reach out to info@allaboutbeer.com. Speaking of that, today's episode is sponsored by New Holland Brewing. Did you know that the term dragon's milk has been around since the 17th century? It was used to describe potent ales and elixirs that were worthy of celebration, a reward at the end of a hero's journey. New Holland Brewing Company is proud to continue that tradition today with Dragon's Milk Bourbon Barrel Aged Stout. It's clocking in at a robust 11% ABV and featuring notes of roasted malt, chocolate, and vanilla. The legend of Dragon's Milk continues to grow, and we'll raise a glass to that. Learn more and find Dragon's Milk near you at dragonsmilk.com. Finally, just a reminder, All About Beer has a podcast channel now. Search and subscribe on your podcast platform of choice, and we hope you enjoy all of the shows that are on there. Steal This Beer has new episodes every Monday, and the BYO Nano podcast comes out on the 15th of every month. And one more time, go visit allaboutbeer.com. As for this show, Nate Schweber does the music, Jeff Quinn designed our logo, and I'm John Hall. New episodes release every Wednesday, and that's when I'm going to be back again to drink beer and to think beer.